Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesday. Today, it is my exceptional honor to have Deborah Rosati on with me.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, so Deborah is an award-winning corporate director and entrepreneur and has been defined in three interconnected ways throughout her 35-year career as a corporate governance champion, catalyst for change, and community builder. As the founder and CEO of Women Get On Board, an 850-member social purpose company, Deborah is building a community, the next generation of women corporate directors, advancing equity, diversity, and inclusion, collaboration, courage, and confidence in the boardroom. Fueled by women holding only 26% of Toronto's Stock Exchange listed company board seats, Women Get On Board amplifies the voices of women leaders, board members, and professionals across Canada through education, mentorship, and allyship. It's been called the power of three. One woman in the boardroom is a token, two is a presence, and three is a voice. Never satisfied with the status quo, Deborah always seeks ways to challenge expectations and drive change. She brings an environmental, social, and governance lens to every board she serves on, as she believes in the power and responsibility of business to change our world for the better. Furthermore, Deborah was recently awarded an honorary doctorate of laws from Brock University just about a month ago. And Deborah's social purpose is to get more women on boards, one woman and one board at a time. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you, Jack. Wow, that's me.
That is you. You are an unbelievable superstar and have been since the moment I met you. It's unbelievable. Your Women Get On Board initiative is absolutely amazing. And when we caught up by Zoom a few months ago, my mind thought of all the parallels that can kind of take place in the nonprofit world regarding women's leadership. One of my pet peeves is that approximately 2/3 of the nonprofit workforce is women, yet they're totally underrepresented in the C-suites. As a matter of fact, I read a study that said that for each additional $1 million in annual revenue, a nonprofit is 0.2% less likely to hire a woman as a CEO. It's totally mind-blowing to me. And so my question to you is, how do we fix this quickly? I'm kind of an impatient guy.
You and me both, Jack. Well, first of all, I want to applaud you on your allyship. And when I use
Thank you.
that word, it's we as allies, men and women, but men in particular, if there aren't enough women in the boardroom and there's not enough women in the C-suite, you recognize that. So
Okay.
I want to say, first of all, it's important to have allies. Secondly, I think we need to I think we have to go deeper. And it might be if you're taking women out of the corporate world, last year, the data, we're data driven, 7.7% of TSX listed companies, 7.7 were chairs, and just over 5% of TSX listed companies were female CEOs.
Wow.
So I'm going to liken it. So if you say 95% of TSX listed companies have CEOs that are women, so the pool is broader
Right.
for having pool of male candidates. So I would liken that, I think, when, not-for-profits, and depending on the size, when they go to market to look for talent and look for CEO leaders, there's fewer women that get to the top, right?
You think?
So I think we need to be considering, that's why the Women in Leadership program, mentorship program that I created at Brock was an example of creating that next generation of women leaders. We're doing that at Women Get On Board, creating
Right.
that next generation for the pipeline for leaders to go, women to go in the boardroom. Similarly, I do think that if we are creating those pipelines, but we have to have mentorship programs, scholarships, sponsorship, allyship, you name it, right? And sometimes women don't necessarily take those C-suite levels, but they have other experiences. And I
Right.
think that's what boards have to do. They may have an area of expertise, and depending on, it might be an industry, it might be if it's a hospital, you might want someone from healthcare. If it's education, you might want someone from education. It really depends on, you've been in the not-for-profit world and and you've been on large campaigns and you've been involved. But I would say that But I do, contrary to that, and maybe it's just the circles that I see, I do meet a lot of women executives, women executive directors of
Right,
not-for-profits. I do, maybe by virtue of, trying to create that next generation of women leaders, I might see more, but I don't have the data for you.
right, right. It blew my mind that the more they raise, the less likely it is that they're going to have a woman as the CEO.
It's
And
interesting, Jack. Interesting. So what happens is, as women, and I will give an example of myself.
sure.
I was asked to chair the board. It was a not-for-profit. It was Ottawa-based. It was the Canadian Internet Registration Authority,
Yeah,
CIRA. And it was going through change. And under my leadership as chair, and recognizing as chair of a board, you're not making, and like any chair of the board, you're not making a decision on your own. It's a
right,
collective decision from the board. There needed to be a change in leadership.
right,
And guess what? I was the chosen one. I was the first. And so sometimes female leaders come in and they have to make change
right,
that wasn't there. I'm not saying I don't have the data, but I had to step up. And that was my legacy that I created. It wasn't for me, it was what was right for the organization. So I think sometimes women leaders go in to make change or transform where others didn't.
right, right. And I think that in this day and age, there's all these great programs. I know the Rotman School of Business has one, and I think U of O has one, professional board designations, which I think are absolutely amazing to have, right? Because it brings that formal rigor as a board member, even on the volunteer boards, right? So, they have to know how to read a financial statement. They have to kind of be able to understand some of the nuances that are in there, some of the HR issues that may come up. And I think it's absolutely amazing. But when you see those head and shoulder shots, as I call them, kind of in the paper, it still tends to be fairly male. And I'm just trying to figure out why there's that gap. And is it that some of the women just don't feel that it's appropriate for them, or that they didn't want to commit the time? And I'm not necessarily asking you to speak on behalf of womankind. I'm trying to get some sort of idea if there's a barrier, and let's see what we can do to break down that barrier.
So maybe if I unpack that question, if I may.
Sure.
So let's just talk about these governance certification programs as
Indeed.
an example. So Institute of Corporate Directors, which comes out of Rotman, and then they have partner universities across the country. So
Sure.
Ottawa, Telford School of Management would be a partner, academic partner. So I do have my ICD.D, which
Right.
means I'm a designated, and I took it back in 2007, 2008. And what I would say to you is it gives you a level of confidence and tools and frameworks to bring that courage and confidence to the boardroom, because you might be a business person, but you might not have ever been in the boardroom. So it
Right.
gives you that confidence, and it also is sort of a seal of approval to say of others, oh, they've taken this. There's not to say guarantee you will show
Yeah.
up as an effective director, but you've got some accreditation.
Right.
And then
Right.
secondly, what I would say is when you're talking about the headshots that you're seeing, the Globe and Mail placement, are you talking about coming out of those programs?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what I would say to you is it's very, very expensive. So for me, I was really fortunate. I didn't have to pay for it. One of the boards that I was on paid for it.
Right.
And so I think, and when I took the program, interesting, it was 1/3 of the 39, 1/3 of us, so 13, do the math,
Yep.
were women. And the
Okay.
other, so 1/3, 2/3 were men. I haven't really looked at the number coming out of the programs, but
Right.
I think you're 30 to 40%, give or take.
Okay.
And that's really reflective of the power of three. And that's really reflective of, the large banks getting to, some of the boards getting to about 35, sort of that 1/3.
Right.
I think as women, it's one of the things that we try to promote through our, mission to get more women on boards is to get that empowerment piece, that education. And there's a really good starting point, I would say, Jack, for anybody. If you don't have the dollars and you don't want, maybe you're not at the place to get into the Institute of Corporate Directors Education Program, they have a phenomenal 2-day program called Governance Essentials.
Right.
It's a 2-day program. And coincidentally enough, I took that when I was chairing the not-for-profit because I'm like, okay, I'm chairing it. I've never done this
Right.
before. This is my inner self saying,
Sure.
okay, I got to show up. I got to be good. And it was a phenomenal 2-day program. So
Wow.
doesn't mean you have to go and get a designation. There's a lot of different programs along the way. For instance, if women get on board, we have a financial intelligence in the boardroom program. So
Right.
that's to help you become more financial literate and understand financials. We also have a getting on boards workshop. So we have programs ourselves. We do not do any governance certification
Right.
programs.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, those are some pretty tangible things. And I think that, having a 2-day course is probably a lot cheaper than having your full thing. I kind of liken it to the EMBAs, right? So they tend to be very, very costly. So unless your employer is paying for it, there aren't too many folks that are going to fork over the tens of thousands of dollars that it takes to get that certification. So that's true. Well, Deborah, if folks wanted to get hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Deborah Rosati on LinkedIn.
Ah, there you go. There you go. And your women get on board you're always promoting something and someone who's just been
Oh,
posted.
follow us. Follow
Yeah.
some women get on board. Follow Deborah Rosati. Yeah, I'm out there. I love engaging. I love encouraging. I love elevating that next generation of, be it women leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs. It's all about creating that next generation.
Deborah, it's so amazing to catch up again with you. I miss our talks, even though you're, only, I don't know, 5 or 6 hour drive away. But I remember fondly years ago, we used to, be right in step as we went through the list of folks that you had brought to the organization. I thank you for your continued support and enthusiasm. You're absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Jack, for your time. And also, I learn from you each time we have a conversation. I want you to know.
Well, thank you.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.